All right, everyone. Hope you had just a few moments to connect with some people. I know it was a short amount of time, and typically in one of these coffee mornings that we're hopefully will have you back on campus here in the coming months, is we would come together in a group setting and really have a chance to talk and get to know each other a little bit. Again, my name is Dave Loveland. I'm the principal here at the high school, and I've been working at HKIS. I'm starting my 5th year, and my family has moved. We moved from Korea, where we worked for 3 years there. Before that, we worked. I grew up and lived in Oregon all my life. So if anyone's from the Pacific Northwest and wants to chat about all of that, I definitely love visiting back in my hometown. My team, Ms. Fine, Lauren Fine, and Carrie Bennett, I'm going to have them go ahead and introduce themselves as well. Go ahead, Lauren.
Sorry. Hi, everybody. I'm Lauren Fine. I'm the associate principal for student life. I have been at HKIS for over 15 years, and I had no idea when I first came to the school how much I'd fall in love with it and stay for as long as I have. Prior to this, I worked in the Middle East, Europe. I raised 3 kids through international schools. And this is actually going to be, sadly, my last year at HKIS. I'm going to spend next year hanging out with my 3 children and 7 grandsons, and then see where that takes me after that. So I'm really looking forward to this year, working more with students and making this, a really good, strong last year. I look forward to meeting all of you soon.
Thank you. And Carrie.
Good morning, parents. My name is Carrie Bennett. Fun fact about me is I am Canadian. I come from Calgary, Alberta. And in the summers, when we can get home, it's been a couple of years now, we hang our hat on Vancouver Island. I've been fortunate enough to be a teacher and an associate principal around the world. I've worked in Bangladesh, Kuwait, Japan, and now this is my 2nd year in Hong Kong. I'm here with my husband, who is a high school counselor, a middle school daughter, and a high school son. I oversee the academic program, so you'll see my name in communications on lots of things as it relates to learning, both in the classroom and without. So looking forward to meeting you in person, and we hope that day comes soon.
Thank you, Carrie. And I better make sure that I say that my wife also works at the high school, Teresa Loveland. She's one of the nurses here at the school. And I also have 2 daughters, one who is a 6th grader this year. So I understand, new families that are transitioning. I understand a little bit about the transition, and I have a 4th grader as well. So you'll see my family, all of our families around campus for different events throughout the year. So today's outcomes for those parents that have been at a number of our coffees in the last couple of weeks, so new parents especially, some of this information you will have heard. But again, it's a chance for us to start the year off, making sure that we all start in the same place. And that way we can have a great year together. So again, we'll be talking about communicating with the school, building community, and then at the end, I'll be talking through a couple of different announcements that are happening. We always start with our mission statement, and as I share with our new families, is that I would hope that anybody who comes to our campus, that you feel this vision, the mission when you come to our campus. You have students that are inquisitive and think about each other, and also think about them, the life outside of themselves. And so it's something that we really believe in. And then along with the ethos of Christian faith, of just taking care of everyone around us. But really, the biggest part about this statement is the "and respecting spiritual lives of all." We understand that everyone is on a different path in their faith journey. And so it's something that we really work hard to help students along the way through their high school experience. Our vision, that we will be a leading place of learning, inspire socially engaged community, collaborative, creative, and resilient learners. So those are our CC and Rs. You will hear lots about those throughout the year. But again, it's something that these are foundational pieces to our classrooms and our educational environment. Communicating with the school. So communication is king. it's really important that we have clear communication as we work together. It's a partnership between the school and our parent community. And we've been really fortunate to have such strong connections with our community, especially during the last couple of years where it was really challenging. So some key places, DragonNet is an area where the cross-section will come out, and also where HKIS Central is. Now, for HKIS Central, you have to actively subscribe. So watch the cross-section each week on Mondays, and you can click a link in there and make sure that you subscribe to that. That will be a notice that you would get if there was any school-wide information that needed to come out right away. With Schoology, it's the platform we use at our school that your students have been on. If you came from the middle school, it's very similar, but at the same time, we use it in many different ways. And so for some of you, you may be added to different groups. And if it becomes too much, again, watch the weekly letter, and I will put information on how you can remove yourself from some of those notifications, and then decide the ones that you really need to hear about. We have a high school announcements page and high school athletics page. Those are the two pages where everyone is subscribed to. And that's where we really try to make sure that parents understand what's going on. It's a good place to get information. And then also within Schoology, it's where you'll find all the information about how your student is doing in their classes. And you'll see from me in the weekly letter about every other month or so. I'll set a reminder of, just sitting next to your student, and at different times of the year, make sure that the grade book.
So I was just looking at this.
Yeah. Somebody signed him up.
Well, I put him on that old list.
Got it.
Hold on, yes. All right, thank you. So again, with your child's grade book, it's important that every once in a while you sit down with them and just let your child drive you through their Schoology page. And so it's a conversation with each other. And then finally, there's grade level WhatsApp groups and our parent advisory group, which at the very end of this slideshow, I'll put their names up, but they help support these WhatsApp groups. And it's a great way for you to if you have questions of what's going on, for people to chime in. But with everything, is that making sure that we communicate in a positive manner. And that's where I want to talk about the norms of communication. There's going to be times where there's going to be disagreements between the school, between your child, between you, between a teacher. And I think that the very first thing we need to start from is assuming positive intent. Everyone is coming from a place of positivity, but it may be scary or it may be difficult. And so just making sure that we pause for a moment to keep our communication positive is an important aspect of our school. And it's something that our parents have done a great job with in the past. Definitely, as you think about the WhatsApp groups, sometimes those chat groups can get a mind of themselves, but again, there's a lot of people on there. Is be mindful of the kind of language that we're using. And again, everything that we do, our kids are aware of as well. So our students are watching us at all times. And so making sure that we communicate in a positive manner will help them as well. Empowering your child. In high school, it is critical for students to learn to take control of their own education. If they're having a conflict, we can help coach them, you can help coach them, but really empowering your child to, if they have a conflict with a teacher or with another student, to have them go talk to that teacher, have that conversation. And if they still are struggling with it, we can then start bringing in the adults. But again, empower your child as much as possible to help them manage their educational life because it will serve them really well as they move on post-high school. And lastly, starting with the teacher or coach. At times something will happen and it's easy to just try to go straight to me. And if you message me directly, the first question I'm going to ask you is, have you talked to that teacher or to that coach first? Because typically the situation gets resolved 99, maybe 95% of the time between the parents and the teacher, or the student and the teacher. And so again, starting with where the situation came up is really an important part of how we communicate together. Now, throughout this presentation, we will pause at times. And so please use the chat to add any questions or comments about anything that we've talked about. And I'll pause for just a moment here and see, Carrie, is there anything in the chat room that we need to take a look at?
The chat room is empty right now.
Okay.
But I'll keep an eye on it as parents are asking questions.
Okay. Yeah, again, throughout the presentation, parents, please feel free to add chats either to Lauren or Carrie, or to the whole group, and then we'll make sure that we're addressing those along the way.
I like it. You?
So parents, I'm going to talk a little bit about communication. So Dave did a brief overview of how we communicate as a school. And as a parent myself, I know that the communication from schools can be quite overwhelming. So Dave, Lauren, and I are mindful of that. And I hope that you have felt thus far that our communication has been clear and concise and timely. And I can't stress enough that that weekly letter that comes out to you really does give you a nice overview of what's happening in the school. I'm just going to spend a few minutes and talk more specifically about the communication of learning. Now, this is just an overview. If you're interested in learning more about how we communicate learning, I am going to run a session with 2 teachers in 2 weeks on September the 15th, which will be specifically about our grading and reporting and how we give feedback to kids. But just a few things that I think are important at this point, as that session is still 2 weeks away. So as Dr. Loveland said, Schoology is how we communicate learning. So it's really important as a parent that you have your Schoology login. If you don't, please email one of us and we will certainly get you sorted. And when you log into Schoology, you will see all of your child's courses. And if you have more than one child in the school, in middle school or high school, all right, we're getting some feedback. I'm just going to mute everybody here. If you have more than one child in the school, you can toggle through your different children. So please make sure you can get into Schoology. It's important to understand that we give feedback many ways to your child about their learning. As a parent in Schoology, you will see the following. You will see narrative comments. We don't give narrative comments on our report cards. We feel that comments should be made in real time and given to kids along the way. So we do encourage you to pop into Schoology every so often and take a look at the narrative feedback that teachers are giving to your child. It is also my hope that the students are looking at those comments as well, so they can see how to improve. You're also going to see numbers 1 through 4 on our formative work. Formative work in the gradebook is those areas for practice where teachers want students to practice the skills. It's low stakes. It's not part of their formal grade, but certainly it's part of the process to do well on those summatives. And the summatives are those higher stakes assessments where the teachers have prepped those students along the way. They've given them lots of practice. And now we're taking a moment to see where the child is at. So the student can know, great, I got this information. I know these skills, and this is where I still need to work. And in Schoology on the summatives, you will see letter grades. And if you want to know more about the letter grade system, please come to the session in 2 weeks. And then we also have parent conferences 2 times a year. We do encourage your child to be a part of those as they are the center of the learning, but that's also a great opportunity to hear about how your child is doing. Now, those are all the formal ways. Those are things parents will see. What you don't see is the day-to-day feedback that's happening in the classroom. And do know that is happening all the time, right? Teachers are giving full class feedback, they're giving feedback to groups, and they're giving feedback to your individual child. And a lot of teachers will use self-reflection as a way for them to understand whether students are kind of hearing that feedback. As we kind of go throughout the year, there'll be 4 times where you'll get some kind of formal report from us. Quarter 1, which will be near October, and then quarter 3, which is in February, early March, we only give approaches to learning. So we give feedback on the work habits of your child. And then in quarter 2, which is right before Christmas, and quarter 4 at the end of the year, there'll actually be letter grades. And again, I can go more over that in our next session. But hopefully that gives you an overview at least of the kinds of feedback that as a parent that you can see and what you can expect from the school. Ultimately, what's really important, and this is a great conversation to have with your child, is that we want all students to be able to answer 3 questions in every class, within every unit, within every moment, right? Where am I going as a learner? Where am I headed? Our teachers are so good at giving students this roadmap of here we are today, and by the end of the month, we're going to be at the swimming pool. And then a child should be able to answer, well, where am I now? You know, how much learning or how many hours do I have to put in to get to the pool? And some students will be at the hospital over on the left side, and it's a quick journey. And others may be down in the playground or the parking lot or the coffee shop. And that's okay, because we're all individuals, but students will know where they are now. That's why the formatives are important. So if your child is saying, I don't need to do that assignment, it doesn't count because it's a formative, the response always should be, well, it does count because it allows you to know where you're at right now. And then finally, a child should always be able to articulate, how can I get there? And that's really where the teacher and the child are working together to craft the learning journey. And that feedback along the way is so important. So if you're wanting to have conversations with your child about learning, you might try this little mapping of 3 questions to help guide that conversation. So again, in Schoology, we have formative and summative, and you will see those 2 categories in the grade book. So eventually when grades start coming in, you can take a look at this. Again, the formative feedback on the left here is the practice, and we don't use to give feedback. We use a rubric. Those rubrics are often linked in Schoology, and we'll go over that at our next session. But we're basically using the language of, is the child meeting expectations? And so you will see numbers like 1 through 4, or you'll see these phrases to show how they're doing. Our expectation as a school is that everyone is meeting. Now, you may not be meeting in the beginning, and that's okay, maybe developing or approaching, but by the end of the course, we want all students to be meeting. And then the summative feedback on the right here is the letter grades that we're probably more accustomed to as adults in our own kind of schooling. We don't have the full letter grade scheme, but we do have the upper part of the scale and the lower part of the scale. Sorry for the music, parents. This is a transition to our class, and the kids pick the music, so it's kind of fun. So when we're talking about the language of feedback, in addition to feedback to skills and knowledge, we also give feedback to learning habits. So if you have a child in the middle school, you'll see these as well. They're called our approaches to learning. So here in the high school, we give feedback on the following 3. You know, how motivated are you as a learner, and how independent are you? And, you know, we scaffold that. We don't expect the same kind of independence as we do in grade 9 as we do in grade 12. And our teachers work with our students on developing these skills. We also look at collaboration. How are you in working with a group, right? And we specifically teach, what does that look like? We've all been on teams that, you know, where there's been conflict, and how do we get that resolved, and how do we work together? I always say to students that in a group project, the outcome of your learning, of the product of your work should be better than if you did that on your own, because you have people with many skills coming together. And lastly, we give feedback on respect and responsibility, and that's that character piece that's built into our mission and our student learning results. So with these, you'll see these twice a year on our report cards, and it's a very simple scale. Either we rarely see that in that particular class, we see it, but it's inconsistent, or the student is consistently showing these. Please talk about these with your child. These are the essence of what it means to be a learner. If we don't have these attributes as learners, then learning often is difficult. And we all know it's being in the workforce, these are the kinds of things that our employers are looking for as well. And then just lastly, again, I will go into this in more detail in a couple of weeks, but when you do go into Schoology, just a couple things to be aware of. So over on the right side in that red square is where you can see the letter grade for a summative. So this student here got an A-, and then there's a nice little bit of narrative feedback that explains why that grade was the way it was. I do ask parents, and this is going to be hard for us because our schooling was different, that you ignore numbers in Schoology. So you can see here there's 100%, we have a 12 out of 12. They really mean nothing. And unfortunately, school grade books are still quite old-fashioned, and they have these back-end calculations. What we really want students and parents looking at are the narrative comments, the letter grade, if there is one, and if it's a formative assignment, also whether they got a 1 through 4, right? And we're aiming for that 3 of meeting expectations. So again, we'll talk more about this, but please do ignore numbers. And I do apologize that they're there. We're still working with this company to see if they can go away. And then just lastly here, and this often becomes important near the end of each semester when we're getting letter grades on our report cards. And I'll often sit with students, and teachers will sit with students to explain, like, why did you get a B+ or why did you get an A-? And we talk through the language of this. All of the evidence of learning in Schoology comes back to this chart. And when I sit with a student and ask them to show me how they were thorough in their understanding, they'll start to understand why they got the grades they did. So this is a great, actually, kind of template to use as a parent and a student, and you can find this in our handbook. And then just one last thing. Some of the questions I often get is, do teachers work together? If there's 4 teachers teaching geometry and you have 4 children in grade 9, kind of what's the common experience? So you can expect as a parent that our teachers work together in the following ways. Number 1, the Schoology grade books and how they're laid out will be the same for teams. And I hope you feel that they're actually quite similar across the whole high school. So as you're navigating course to course, it doesn't look different. Our standards for courses are the same. We have curriculums that we follow. Your child's not going to get different standards from one class to the next. The expectations for achievement are the same. Course teams use the same rubrics. They grade together on big assignments. We call that calibration. And they do that to make sure that they have the same expectations. We always hear from our kids that, oh, this teacher's harder than this teacher. And a lot of that is perception, because I know our teams work together. They even look at their grade distributions across classes to make sure that they're being consistent. And teams will also be have the same policies for reassessment. And so those are the things that you can expect to be the same. What might be different across our course teams is that the kind of feedback in Schoology, of course, if it's narrative feedback, teachers might choose to give feedback on different assignments. Sometimes assessment format looks different, especially if there's choices within a classroom of how one's assessed. But again, those are assessing the same standards and they have the same activities. Sometimes or often the lessons are different depending on, the teacher's style and of course the art of teaching. Your child will have their favorite teachers and maybe they'll have the teachers where the style isn't their favorite, but that's all part of growing up and learning how to work with different people. So that is the brief overview of just the communication of learning. What you can see in Schoology, how our teams work together. And so again, I hope that you'll be able to make our session on September 15th, where we'll dig into this a little deeper. But if you have any questions about anything that I've talked about, please just pop that in the chat and we'd be happy to answer you.
And Carrie, while you take a look at the chat, I will address one of the questions that came up from the beginning of the presentation was around, how do I join the WhatsApp groups? So in the next week, I will be sending individual emails out per grade level with a link for the WhatsApp groups, along with just our policy around positive communication within the schools. So again, you can look for that. I will send that message out by next Friday with information on how you can join those WhatsApp groups. Any other questions in the chat?
Yeah, a good question. When is back to school night? It's a good question, actually, because teachers will be going over this information with you. They'll talk, they're basically, you're going to follow your child's schedule, and classes are 10 minutes and you'll get to meet the teacher. They'll talk a little bit about themselves and their approach, and they'll talk about the syllabus and how they approach learning. So that is on September the 8th. It'll run from 5 to 8:30 and it will be via Zoom. We will be sending out information on September the 1st. So we'll have a letter of what the evening's about, and we'll actually have a schedule for the evening with all of the Zoom links for your child's schedule. That is a fantastic evening. We don't like to have things on Zoom, but one of the actually advantages is that often both mom and dad or grandparents or aunts and uncles can actually make that event. And so we had a great high participation last year.
Great.
So maybe Dave, how has HKIS's approach to learning changed over the past 10 years? Yeah, thank you, Cliff, for that question. I do hope you'll come to our session in 2 weeks. One of the slides that I have prepared is, what was learning like when we were kids? And I want parents to reflect on that because it was very, very different. And Cliff, we could have like an hour conversation about this, but if I was to put it into a short paragraph, really the change has been that we understand that learning takes time and we don't penalize students for early learning. We've all come out of schools that have averaged, and there's danger in averaging because if I start the year getting D's and I end the year getting A's, I'll only ever be a B student. Where our approach is, if consistently students are showing growth and if they're getting A's consistently and most recently by the end of the year, we can ignore early learning. It just took that student longer to get there, and that's okay because ultimately they got there. So I'll talk more about that, but it's really a growth approach. It takes the fear out of learning. And my experience as a teacher and an administrator is it takes the way I'm horrible at math or I can't do that. Because what we say is, well, you might be having trouble with this part of math, but you're not horrible at math. Let's just work on your geometry or your algebraic equations. So thank you for that question.
And I would say that, following when we added grade descriptors a few years ago, it really has helped students understand what the expectations are within the classes. Parents understand the expectations in the classes and why a grade ends up where it is. At the end of the day, we want our grades to represent what students know and what they can do. And so that's at the end of the day, that's what we're looking for. And so those are some of those big changes. There was a question about students understanding how they're assessed. It's something that will happen within their classrooms. If I would say that if for any reason your student has a question about that, they can come see Carrie anytime. They could see their teachers about it. It's something that we'll be talking with them around.
One other great question here from Andrew is how should parents communicate with teachers? So teachers communicate with kids mostly through Schoology. Parents, please communicate with teachers through Gmail, and our teachers will communicate with you through Gmail as well. So we use email. We always say to our teachers, if you're getting into the second, third paragraph of an email, it's a phone call. And so we would ask the same of you. Sometimes it's just easier to have a conversation on the phone or to have you come in when parents can come on campus. We always want to assume positive intent in our communication and make sure that our communication is clear.
And it's important to understand that, and you'll see the bell schedule here in a minute, is that we have office hours every day in the mornings and also in the afternoons where students connect with teachers, but also it's a chance that if you need to connect with a teacher, there's time set aside every day for that. All right, we're going to move into activities and student life. And so Lauren, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to you.
Hi, thanks everybody, and thanks Carrie. So for us, an area that we really, as part of our school-wide focus on health and well-being over the last couple of years, we've really been focusing on really, building a connected, included, and collaborative, involved community. We know that our adolescents really need to feel connected and inspired and included. So we really have become very intentional about offering several ways to give students a rich, well-balanced experience in the high school. And I'm going to go into a couple of ways this morning about how we are encouraging a thriving and flourishing community, which you might have heard in middle school is sort of couched under social emotional learning, SEL. They use that acronym quite a bit. In the high school, we refer a lot to well-being. Under this umbrella, I'm going to quickly touch on our bell schedule and how that's been helpful in approaching this. We're going to look at Dragon Days, our homeroom program, our wellness block, and clubs, activities, and service. So let's start with the bell schedule. We We learned last year a lot about how kids were managing virtually. And so we used students and their voice in helping us develop the spell schedule that was similar to a couple years ago, and some of the learnings that we took from the time when we were during COVID, during virtual classes. We also know that our adolescents are not great, some of them early in the morning. And so if you have a look, you'll notice that our schedule allows for students to come in early on some of the early buses, which students actually choose to do, many of them. But also we actually start our first classes at 8:25. During that time between 7:30 and 8:30, we do have opportunities for students to engage in more than just, hanging out, having coffee, meeting with friends. We have something called wellness mornings. Every day is different day of the week. Everything from devotionals run by our spiritual coordinator, Mike Kirsten. We have some PE activities that could look like yoga, some sort of low impact strength training, maybe some Zumba. We have students running well-being activities and also some mindfulness and relaxation. Also, if you'll notice that we have 10-minute passing time between classes, so it gives kids an opportunity to spend some time after class checking in with the teacher and also giving them, perhaps a quick snack and on their way to their next class. We have a 45-minute lunch that gives everybody time to decompress, have something to eat, teachers included. And then at the end of the day, we have something called flex time. That's an opportunity on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays for students after classes finish at 2:40 to check in with teachers if they need some clarification with anything. And teachers are also then have an opportunity, you will see on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, teachers have an opportunity to elect to have students stay in a particular genre of a subject area for kids to get some assistance or perhaps a retake of a formative or something that they may need to reteach. And on Tuesdays and Thursdays between 2:40 and 3:10, we have something that we call homeroom, which is in other schools sometimes called an advisory program. I just want to stress that it's really, really important, especially for new parents coming into the high school, that homeroom is not sort of an opt-in. We expect kids, every child, to be part of homeroom all year long. It is something that we value deeply. And so it would be really helpful if all appointments, practices, extra tutoring happens after 3:10, because that is the official end time of our school day and not during the homeroom time. Homeroom. The way we run homeroom, students are assigned by community and it's aligned with their counselors. There are around 10 to 14 students in a homeroom. One teacher spends all 4 years with students until graduation. This year we working closely with students, and so they will be working with a teacher and really a group of teachers to develop the curriculum. It's developed to the different grade levels, and it's activity-based. During the time that students are in homeroom, they will be participating in something that we have been running for a couple of years called the well-being check-in. So the well-being check-in, I think, happens as well in the middle school. Every other Thursday, we ask students to reflect on various domains of well-being. And it's usually couched in the context of the last 24 hours. Students are also given an individual report at the end of each semester. It's interesting that I've had some conversations with students about this, and they have said, some students have said that actually the report is less important for them. What is important that they find is that they actually are given an opportunity to just slow down and stop for a minute and really reflect on the last 24 hours and kind of center themselves and figure out where they're at. And that the report, watching their progress and how, they've been managing over the semester is actually less important. It's that moment when they sit and reflect really sort of puts them in a really good mindset. Why do we do this? It's really important that students do, regularly reflect on their well-being. I think for adults as well, it's something that becomes really helpful in centering for us. It gives our counselors an opportunity to reach out to students because one of the questions that students get asked is, if they'd want to make an appointment with a counselor. And sometimes a student might be thinking about that, but doesn't actually act on it. But they have an opportunity in the survey to actually mention if they want to meet with a counselor. And if that pops up, the counselor has an opportunity and make some time for a student. And it really does give us a lot of excellent data about, what's happening with our students and the well-being, within the community. So it also, this is a very important part of how we can really be mindful and monitoring and managing our students' well-being. Something else you'll hear about is our wellness block. This is one period of the day of the student cycle that every student will have in their schedule all 4 years of the time that they're in high school. This block is shared by 3 different areas of different departments. The teachers work together. They focus on the physical, mental, and spiritual well-being of our students. For 1 semester, students engage with counselors in what we call a seminar class. This focuses on developmentally appropriate curriculum. For example, in 9th grade, we focus heavily on transitioning into the high school for our 9th graders. In 11th grade, they really are deeply immersed in the college process. And then in 12th grade, students are really focusing in the 2nd semester on leaving well so that they can land well when they move off to university. Through their spiritual exploration classes, students will engage with some really personal exploration. They will explore Christian spirituality and mindful practices. This really puts spiritual development at the heart of our school's curricular program, which is an important, message that is resonated in our mission. And so it's a really important way that we focus on that area. And finally, students will engage in PE all year long. The focus for that is that we really want to be encouraging lifelong fitness. And so hopefully that by the time students have come out of 4 years of having a regular opportunity to develop that, it becomes a lifetime pattern for them as they move on.
So let's pause there and take some questions. So let's take a look and see what the chat rooms say, and then we'll continue on. So anything in the chat rooms, Carrie or Lauren?
Yeah, I've been answering just by writing, but Lauren, I think something maybe to speak to is someone was wondering whether the well-being check-in is it for the student, or will parents ever get to see that data, and how do we involve parents in the process?
It is for the students only, but students are given at the end of every semester, they're given a record of what how they were doing throughout that semester. And they have it, actually, they get physically given it. I think it gets sent to them, but they also get it physically on a piece of paper, and they have opportunity with the adults, if they want to reflect on it and see where, what the pattern was, what their sleep pattern was, what their level of happiness was throughout the semester. So your children are given that. So perhaps that's a conversation to have with them. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so. And it's really about, as our counselors work with our students. When the counselor feels it's appropriate, they share information with families, and so that doesn't change anything.
I think the reason why it's given to students as well is that part of what we do in the high school is really try and help students focus on their learning and help them to take responsibility for their learning. in addition to their sort of, their well-being. And so this is an opportunity for them to be engaging and reflecting and, working with their counselors on managing their well-being. And like Kerry said, at any point, if counselors are concerned, they will, of course, be reaching out to parents.
Maybe Dave, you could just go back to the bell schedule, just something to clarify so it's not confusing, is we do have, you'll see across the top, we have an 8-day rotation, and we do have these A's and B's on there. So very briefly, why we do that is it really is for our wellness block, because a block, so one number, let's say day 5, wellness shares that day. And so students are either in PE and specs, or they're either in PE and seminar. So we have to denote A and B. So if wellness block is number 5 for me, I might have PE when it's a 5A. And I might have my specs when it's a different day. So it's just a way for the students. So parents, don't worry too much about it. Your child has it sorted already in their Schoology.
The other thing I wanted to touch on, because the schedule slide flipped by very quickly, I wanted to just quickly also mention, if you look on the right-hand side, there's something called Dragon Days. This was something that we introduced last year with student input. We really realized through the year how fatigued students were becoming with constant screen time. And so it was an intentional way that we had no formal academic classes on this day that we at the time called day 9, because it came up, on the day after day 8. It was our 9th day of the cycle. But we learned a lot about that. And so we've carried it into this year, and really as an opportunity to focus on health and well-being of our students still. What we did this year, because we are, face-to-face learning, that we've built it into having one of these days per month. And so we've called them Dragon Days. This is really an opportunity for students. We have no academic classes. We have a community gathering. We have a longer homeroom. We offer student-led sessions. It helps students develop their leadership, some service projects. They can pursue passion projects. There are opportunities for academic support. But it's really a great way for students to take ownership of their learning, give them some voice, give them some choice. And so we really are excited about Dragon Days. We love them.
All right, we will continue on here. Oops. Student leadership and activities.
So lastly, there are a couple other ways, obviously, that students are, encouraged to take responsibility for who they are growing as emerging adolescents. We have a really strong leadership focus in the high school. Generally with all students, we really work to emphasize empowering them, providing opportunities for them to grow, particularly as servant leaders. This doesn't mean that they're always successful at their endeavors, but it really does, try and help guide them to use failures as an opportunity for growth. We find, today's youth, they want to be perfect at everything. Sometimes it stops them trying new things, but we want to really help them understand that, in being complacent, you don't really grow. And so try new things, put yourself out there. We have a safety net, and so we do encourage kids to try and put themselves into a place of uncomfortableness with the support around them to grow as leaders. We use students in so many of our groups and committees. There's always a place for students at the table. We want their voice. We seek out their ideas and thoughts always. And another very important part with that responsibility, with that position comes an enormous amount of responsibility, which is what we try and help students understand, that our leadership are expected to be role models for we make it very clear to students all the time that taking on a leadership role comes with tremendous responsibility. And so because of that, we also train our leaders. We don't just give them a title, but we really help them grow with some experience. In fact, last Saturday, Carrie, Dave, and I ran a really successful leadership retreat for almost 100 students. And we explored the why of leadership. We challenged them to think about why they take on a leadership position in the way that they do. We also have over 100 clubs and activities, service opportunities for students to engage in. There's something for everybody. It's a rare student who doesn't find something that will excite them. All our clubs have a teacher advisor attached who helps sort of monitor and mentor students through the year. And we try really hard to maintain sort of a standard with our clubs. We ask for some grace for that. Sometimes students are leading out and sometimes they're not as responsible or as passionate as we hope they would be. That is something that we work through with them through the years. So if at any point your child has signed up for a club or an activity and they're disappointed with the way it's being run, please urge them to come and see me and chat with me. We can work it through. And it's also really good feedback for our students who are emerging as leaders as well, as to how to manage themselves in that role. And finally, service. In our mission, clearly, we dedicate our minds to inquiry, our hearts to compassion, and our lives to service and global understanding. We have a plethora of opportunities for students to engage in service, particularly to serving our more vulnerable Hong Kong community. We have a thriving Seas of Service program known as SOS. So encourage your students to think about connecting with that. We hope, through that students will value the benefits of serving each other with humility and mutual respect and come out stronger, more, compassionate human beings. Encourage your kids to attend the club's marketplace that we're going to be advertising for next Friday. It's for students only. It's a big, and all students will have an opportunity to visit, the different clubs and service programs in the school and be able to sign up for the year for those that they find appealing.
Lauren, just two questions. One is, where can parents find a list of the clubs? And two, are clubs, do they have limited capacity or are they pretty much open for anybody?
It's a rare club that has a limited capacity. I think if students show commitment and passion and so they maintain that, there's no limit to how many students can belong in a club. And the list of clubs it's in two places. It's at the back of the high school handbook, and it's also on the Dragonet High School website.
Great, thank you. And one thing to think about also is that we strive for balance in everything that we do. And so we ask students when they sign up for clubs, find a club that they're really interested in. It's not about how many clubs you can gather through high school. Instead, dive deep and be a part of a club and really become something that you enjoy. And if midway through the year it's not for you, then find another club. But really, it's not a resume builder at all, the more clubs that you're in. Instead, we want you to really invest into the things that we're into in the school. So I'm sure there's a couple more questions. I'm going to go through these announcements, but then we'll pop back into questions. We have a few more minutes left in this session. And again, just as a reminder, anybody who wants to know information about athletics and activities, we will start that right after this session with Sharon Lung, our athletic director. So you can just stay on if you're interested in that. As Carrie said, back to school night, September 8th, you'll be getting information September 1st, and you'll get everything that you need to know for that. Just a reminder in the mornings that, if you're school starts at 8:25, if you're dropping off your child at 8:10, 8:15, it's busy. It's really busy and you'll be in traffic. If you drop them off at 8 a.m., you'll be okay. So, we have students that arrive at school each day, even starting from 7:15 in the morning. So the campus is open and there's plenty of places for kids to hang out and to study or just be. Just a reminder on dress code, especially during warm months. Please make sure that you take a look at the dress code that's in the student handbook and help us with that, with conversations with your children at home, so that we can continue to focus on the things that are important at the school and not working through dress code issues. Lastly, I was asked to touch base on the college application limit. It was brought up last year if we would look at increasing the limit for college applications. We evaluated it, and at the end of the day, we've stayed where we are with 10 applications for a number of reasons. One of the biggest reasons is that right now colleges understand. First of all, colleges know our school. We've been around a long time, and students have been really successful in many different universities and colleges throughout the world, and so they know that we have a limit. And if a student applies from our school, it means that they're a serious application. For schools that just allow as many applications as you want, colleges are at times can be a little wary of that because they know that they may be one of 20 or 30 applications. So at the end of the day, we want our students, our counselors work really closely with students and families to try to hone in those lists. And when you think about 10 schools, it's a lot. And then on top of it, if you think about the UC schools, all the schools in the UC system count as one. All the schools in the UK, in the UCAS system count as one. And so there's actually a number of different options there. But again, we will maintain the college limit of 10. And if people have questions about that, they can talk to me or our counselors directly. Carrie, Lauren, any questions in the chat that we need to talk about?
Just very briefly, if you are looking for our academic handbook or the student handbook that has the dress code and other policies of the school, you can go to DragonNet. That's your parent login for our HKIS website. And if you head over to the high school section, there is a section for handbooks. We'll also post that in the weekly letter for next week and give you a link to that if that's easier for you.
There was also a question about special arrangements for interim this year. So we will be looking at interim in the next little while. Last year, we did actually have plans for interim in Hong Kong. We had a really fun program developed, and we will be looking at that for mirroring that for this coming year. We didn't, in fact, get an opportunity to do it. Unfortunately, at the last minute, we had to shut things down, but we're really ever hopeful that this year we'll be able to offer students a wonderful opportunity for a week-long program in Hong Kong.
Thank you. And I just shared on the screen our grade reps, along with our Booster Club and PFO representatives for the Parent Advisory Group. This group, we meet together once a month. They bring forward questions from the community or specific grade level questions. And it's been a really amazing group to work with during my whole time here at HKIS. And together we really, we adjust things, we listen to each other. It's a really great place to connect. So again, if you have questions or if you want to bring things forward on a larger scale that may or may not be directly related to just your child or a systems question or anything like that, please contact these reps and they will make sure that they bring that information forward each month. All right, we are right at 9 o'clock. And we're going to end here again with looking at our outcomes. This was the plan for today, talking about communication with the school, building community, and then working through a few different announcements. I really hope that everyone enjoyed the parent coffee today. We are really looking forward to having everyone back on campus in the coming weeks, months, and stay tuned for messages with that in the weekly cross section. Along with that, you can always get in contact with us anytime. Our emails are easily found on the website. We also have a HS main office at hkis.edu.hk that you can also message, and we'll make sure that the information gets to the right person. All right, we will close here. And again, thanks everyone for joining. And I'm not going to drop off, but if anybody would like to stay, we will start in just a few moments talking about athletics and activities. Otherwise, everyone have a great day, and we'll see you later.
Thank you.
So we will start up here in about 2 minutes. We'll let everybody grab a cup of water or a cup of coffee, and then we'll come back. So I have 9:01. So at 9:03, we'll start up with Ms. Lung and athletics. All right, everybody, we are back. And so we're going to go ahead and get started and talk a little bit about high school athletics. So I'll introduce Ms. Lung. If you want to talk a little bit introduce yourself about your time at HKIS, we'll get started.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sharon Lung, and this is starting my 20th at HKIS. My first was at the upper primary as a physical education is my 13th year, starting as the AD in the high school. I just want to say I'm really happy to have you here. Hopefully we can talk a little bit about what our plans are for the year. Last year was definitely sort of one of those whirlwind years where we're kind of pivot, turn, trying to give our kids as many opportunities as possible. But we're very hopeful that we'll be able to move forward this year and hopefully in the coming years get back to our full force travel seasons and such. So let's get started. Quick thing, my kids both went through HKIS R1 through grade 12. Both were represented HKIS in soccer and one of my sons in tennis. So athletics is a family tradition as well as something that we're passionate about. Just to get started, I know many of you are coming from the middle school, so we'll kind of talk about what's different about the high school program versus the middle school program, or maybe the program come from overseas. We strongly believe in educational athletics, which means that anything that we're doing on a sports field or in the pool or in the gym is an extension of the classroom. Of course, we want to build skills and we want to win and be successful, but we also feel that the social emotional aspects of integrity, working hard, being committed to teammates is equally important. With that, 98% of our teams are faculty coached. We do have a number of our teams that partner with professional coaches in some of the high-end sports that we have in our high producing sports and individual sports or programs that we're developing. So you will see professional coaches working alongside our faculty in sports like tennis, badminton, and that's really sort of brought our program to a new level. Each of our coaches go through some training in terms of what our commitment to our mission and our philosophy is, and we're really proud of the things we've been able to do over the last 5 to 10 years. And that goes along with our program is we are a train to compete program, which basically means that we do have as a majority of our programs. Having said that, we are all-inclusive. We do offer one all-inclusive sport each season, with being touch tag rugby in season 1, country in season 2, and track and field in season 3. We'll talk a little bit more at the end because I know one of the biggest questions I have from new parents and grade 9 parents is, how do I get my kids involved and how do I set them up for success? And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Moving on. We do believe that although we do have 8 to 10 students that go on to represent HKIS at the NCAA level, and in fact this year we had a former HKIS grad who the Olympics. The focus of our program is actually the other 99% who are hoping to really encourage a lifetime love of sport and the confidence that, if they the workplace basketball team or volleyball team, that they'll feel confident to continue those skills on through life. All right, moving on. Many of you have gone through the challenge of new registration. We started using the Schools Buddy program a couple of years. Middle school had been using it for a number of years. So we basically sort of built on that use for our registration, which came in very handy because with COVID policies and procedures, it was really important for us to know who was coming to us for tryouts so that we could set those up for success and ensure that we guidelines to keep, please note that we did have registration 1 that was the beginning of August. We will open registrations again for 2 and season 3 sports, different times of the year. We post all of those reminders on our high school group that Dr. Loveland communicated earlier in this parent coffee. That's where if there's any weather updates, if there's a change to a schedule, which are many of those, because again, I think our goal this year, our philosophy is pivot turn, and we're trying to give kids as much opportunity to be active. But again, the government guidelines change weekly, sometimes daily. So we are trying to follow those, but also give as many opportunities as possible. We do have a seasonal philosophy, meaning that most of our sports follow a 9 to 10 week if they can. What drives those is, which leagues we belong to. The exceptions to these 9 or 10 week seasons are those that where our travel season doesn't necessarily fall in line with our local season. We do belong to 2 local leagues, the International School Sports Federation, which is a huge mouthful, as well as the HKSSF, which is the broader local program that we belong to. And again, some of those both so that we give our students a complete season, and some we're just one or the other because that's the best fit for our program. Okay. Tournaments. Now, last year, we basically offered an in-house program, so we wanted to continue. We focused on return to play and in-house. This year, we are hoping to move forward towards participation back into our local leagues. We just found out yesterday from the HKSSF that we should be able to get started with a few of our sports in the next couple of weeks, and then they'll sort of add them in as we get into the cooler parts of the month. So we will continue to families on what that looks like. In the meantime, there are 8 international schools that have banded together, and we're going to look at doing friendlies and off-site, on-site. We're working through what those regulations look like with our admin and with other school admin to see, hopefully our benchmark is to hope that going mid to late September. So in terms of tournaments, we cannot offer overseas tournaments because of the one-day quarantine, but we do hope that we can replace those with some solid solid local play tournaments. And we're really excited those connections with schools that we haven't had that opportunity in years past. One thing I just wanted to touch on is we do that our students look at their overall schedule to ensure that they can make a commitment to the season. It is very difficult for us to build team. If we don't have the full squad there each and every day, and because we only have 10 weeks, and for many of our teams 3 days a week to train, we really have to pack quite a bit into a very short time. So we ask that you look at our resource that we have on our Schoology group that basically outlines our training days. Tryouts typically run 2 to 3 days minimally, and that allows us to be able to have a good look. Everybody has a bad day, so single day try best interest of making sure that we give everybody a fair shot. Which is why we do give them more than 1 day. I know that looks a little different on Schools Buddy registration, so we're working to find that, but appreciate your support. If there are conflicts in a student schedule, we need to know those ahead of time so that we can kind of make a decision what's best for them, for team. And again, we try to be super flexible at grade 9 to give kids lots of opportunity, but as we move to varsity level sports in grade 11, sometimes they have to make a choice between a sport or a sport in a club, sometimes conflicts with the school play. But again, we try to do our best to give a quality program that also allows for some flexibility in these COVID times. All right. We feel that those of you who have participated in sports realize that being part of a sports team is a great way to stay connected to your alma mater, building spirit, going to games and building that school spirit, and then also supporting your schoolmates, your teammates is very critical and very important to us. We have an activities council, Ben Pack, who's a grade 11 basketball player of our activities council. We had our first meeting yesterday. He will have a booth set up at the club marketplace in a couple of weeks. And what we do is we try to get a broader snapshot of the student body to sort of represent, and they do advertising, they do events management. Last year, we started a Friday Night Lights, which was hugely successful. And that allows us an opportunity for, like last year, our cross country team was highlighted in a virtual meet. We have some faculty versus student activities, and that's a great way for the broader student body to get involved. You don't have to be an athlete or an athletic team that's participating that season to participate in the faculty or the student. That's a great way to get excited about being active and being a dragon. Lastly, this is our team in the athletics office. Vipin Chopra actually is going to be retiring after 25 years in a few weeks, but we hope to have a great replacement for her. And Mabel Liu is our assistant, so she's sort of our game day coordinator. Transportation and those things will fall to me once Ms. Chopra is gone, but we're here to support you, and we're here to support the athletes and the coaches to quality program. We, again, part of Dr. Leveland's communication process, we don't typically talk about playing time unless a coach has been talked to first. We want to advocate for themselves. So if they've been cut from a team or they don't think playing time, we feel that it's a good life skill for them to be a self-advocate. So coming to me, I will ask first whether it's been communicated with and what conversation was. And again, 95% that takes care of it. If not, my door is always open, and we are happy to support and connect. But again, I guess we have some time for some questions and answers, Dr. Loveland.
Yep. So I'll ask a few questions. And again, any of you that have been part of our school for a number of years, Ms. Chopra, she's spent 25 years working at our school. And so again, she'll be retiring at the end of this month. So feel free to send her a message as well. So a question about, she said, I understand that JV soccer, boys soccer is actually season 2 sport, even though tryouts are occurring now. So would it be possible to play both JV boys soccer and basketball?
At this point in time, yes, JV soccer will not be till season 2. The reason we have, because we have a great block of time to use the field rather than us having to use a half field. Typically we have 30, 35, 40 boys trying out, at which challenge to get a good look on half pitch. So it also gives opportunity for students to, again, manage their schedule. It is a bit of be able to do both because there are some direct conflicts. And at this, I would say we would not, we'd need to work with the coaches, because if both leagues go forward, there would be direct conflicts. Last year, we were able to allow students to do both. We should know in the next 2 to 3 weeks whether there'll be a direct conflict. But again, we're still in that pivot turn mode in terms of sort of at the mercy of a local league. If the local league doesn't move forward and we have to arrange our own friendlies, then it shouldn't be a problem. We'll do our best to work around it.
Great, thank you. Are the training days of the week out yet for basketball? Where can I find that?
They are listed. I will double check, but they are listed in that tryouts and training resource that's listed at Office of High School Schoology. I also posted it in the announcements, and it's basically just a document that outlines every training for season 1, 2, and 3 sports.
Great. Is there an active equestrian and sailing club this year?
Okay, so we do not have an equestrian club per se. There is a HKIS students that do go out to Fanling, and we do through John Powell's department, similar to our fencers and our squash team. We don't have official teams, but there are school competitions, and we do allow them to represent HKIS. So that's just basically the form that comes from HKSSF. They come to our office, we sign it, we stamp it. We ask for a signature of who's going to be the representative coach that day, and ensure that they've got a code of conduct that they're aware of. In terms of sailing, not aware that we will be running sailing this year as a club. Ms. Fine, do you?
Yeah, I had a couple of students come and see me about, and we've been in touch with Mr. Coleman in the middle school, and he's working with them. I do think it's going to go ahead. He's just working out of it to see how many kids are going to go and how he can supervise that.
Yeah, and having said that, I know sailing and rowing are 2 separate things, but we're working with the ongoing rowing that's sort of had a foot in each club door and also in the next door. And we're working to sort of bring that in line with our varsity level programs. So we're working with Mary Lamb and Mr. Rowe, Coach Rowe, who's a new PE person. So we're hoping to bring that on board this year and have there.
Right, there was a question or more a comment about Schools Buddy not having up-to-date information and finding Schoology group great and direct email, but finding Schools Buddy not reliable in this time.
At schools, we've been trying to work with IT, and we totally take that on board because this is the first full year that we've used it with IT to see if we can do a better job, because once we uploaded information, we were going to lose anybody who had registered before we made some tweaks to some of the tryout date changes. We were going to drop. So very aware, and we are hope to get those ironed out before season 2 registration start.
So Sharon, you would say at this point, fall back on Schoology as much as possible.
Yeah, so it's like a number of parents didn't meet we had for season 1. So essentially we've been loading them manually. I think the confusion came from if tryout block times for tryouts, an early block and a late block, we weren't able to manage how that looked. So they had to sign up multiple times for tryouts. So we're well aware of that hiccup, and we're hoping to get that ironed out before. So Schoology definitely is the place that's the most up to date. And yes, thank you for being patient with Schools Buddy. We're working on it.
Great, thank you. Is track and field and JV girls soccer possible, or is there a clash during the term, or is there a clash if they're both in season 3?
That's going to depend whether we will make it work if it's local only, and what we've have done in past when we have had track runners that were players. Essentially, we have the coaches work together, and they have to I guess decide what's their primary sport, because essentially track and soccer would travel eventually at the same time. So that if they're a grade 12 this year, it's looking unlikely that we'll have travel, although we still are leaving that open. But we'll do our best to work around it. And again, track field events, sprint events, middle distance events are on certain days. We aren't as flexible with soccer times because we have fixed times for the field. But we'll do our best. So get in touch with me, and we'll connect coaches. And
Great. Is there any movement between Division 1 and Division 2 for the players during the term, during sports seasons?
Okay. I'm assuming this means that there's like we have 2 JV2 boys basketball teams. We have 2 JV girls basketball teams. That we offer a Division 1 and a Division 2. Once players are selected for a team, they're on that team for the year. Now they're both eligible for the JV1 the next year if they're grade 9, or if they're grade 10, they're both eligible for varsity. And we have had students that a varsity squad after being on a JV2 team the year before. But we typically don't put 2 teams in the same division, because one is typically a little more development, and then the other one is typically just competing at a slightly higher level.
Right. And to go back to a little bit to talk about soccer, but really it's any of the sports in the seasons where where a kid wants to try to play 2 different sports. That in our current environment, we have a little bit of flexibility if we are in charge of the competitions. So if we're running invitationals, or if we're in charge of the scheduling, if we are attached to the leagues, it'll be much more challenging because there will be a lot of conflicts. So I think in this year, there may be some more opportunity than in the future, but moving forward, we would expect that students would need to select a sport and be in that sport. Is that fair, Sharon?
Yes, last year we were, and I think we had a couple students that were doing 3 sports in one season, and it was great because we wanted kids to be active, and we just never knew whether we were still going to be competing 2 or 3 weeks or training 2 or 3 weeks down the line. Again, as we get in closer into the next month or so, and particularly I think by season 2, then we'll have a better idea. And those sports that are just training, then they tend to want to be more flexible. Those that are actually in leagues will have to be less flexible.
And last question I have here, is field hockey a varsity sport?
Yes, it is.
Oh, we got another one.
We have one squad. It's it's very similar to our cross country. Well, cross country goes by age group as well. But yes, we have one varsity sport, grades 9 to 12. Yes, one team.
Sharon, can you just explain real quick on this screen, there's adjustments to regular season. So table tennis, netball, rugby.
Okay, so for instance, the school rugby union a week and a half ago came out and they are not going to put on any schools rugby from until January 2022 at the earliest. We sat down with coaches, and because we've been a year out without rugby training, and a lot of our high-end kids are going to clubs because they have lots of great opportunity there. But we want to keep rugby viable, so we feel that we're gonna wait till a little bit cooler time of the season, work on fitness, getting to train, and then we're going to touch tag rugby, which is a great introduction for new kids to rugby. But at the same time, we've got 4 coaches that are going to sort of have different levels there. So it'll be a great opportunity to have 4 coaches working together with our programs. And then we hope that by that point in time, there'll be some other schools that have come on board, and we can actually have like a schools mini touch tournament in early December.
Great. And Sharon, can you just put a little teaser out there about our Combine Day that we'll be looking at in the future?
Yes. So we're one of the things, the feedback that's come back from some of our students that have gone on to university, either club level or even intramural level, is, we want something, we want something more than just a letter jacket and I've got a pin for my sport. They want some hard data. So linking in with our PE team and our great fitness instructors with Coach Ian Wilson and Dave's experience at the college level in football, is there's a great spirit that comes from offering these combines, which is going to measure speed, agility, quickness. We've gotten a lot of great equipment in, and can talk a little bit more about what that exactly looks like. But our first one's going to be September 22nd, which is a public holiday, 3 or 4 hours. Kids will come out, we'll have music playing, we'll have our coach run basically opportunities for them to get timed and tested. And then they'll basically have something from the school that shows where they're at fitness wise.
Great, thank you. And we're looking at doing these a couple times a year moving forward to give students some data. So all right, it looks like those are our questions for now. Sharon, thanks for joining on this morning. Everyone else, you can always email any of us or contact us anytime, but appreciate you signing in and being on Zoom with us this morning. So until we see you on campus, everyone have a great week, and we'll see you later.
Thank you.